Hey everyone, so I'm just cutting in here really quickly to give some context on this video today. So it will be a dye with me video. I'm going to introduce it all, talk about everything like we normally do, but I just want to let you know that I had the actual physical videos of me dyeing the yarn, so the dye with me portion, those videos got corrupted, and so I was able to repair one clip, but otherwise I am not at the point where I have repaired files. And so I'm here in the dye studio. I just finished dyeing up the orders that I needed to get dyed up today, and now I'm going to be re-recording the dye with me skeins. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context. When I do the voiceover while I'm dyeing, that will be relevant to exactly what you see. But some of the introduction that I do beforehand and when I talk about the skeins afterwards, those were all assuming you were going to see those original videos that I filmed. So in today's dye with me, I am doing two techniques. So we're going to use the same colors using two different techniques. Again, I'm going to introduce it all right after this. But when I dyed those skeins up, I did it with batch dyeing across different bases for each technique. And what you guys are going to see is kind of the other way I used to do it, where I just kind of did the one skein. So I just wanted to put context around that in terms of when you see all of the skeins at the end, you're going to see a lot more skeins and you're going to see me dyeing. And that is because I am kind of going backwards to dye. I should be okay in terms of the formulas and such, but keep that in mind as well, that I'm dyeing, these are one-of-a-kind skeins. I don't write the formulas down, and so I'm going to just kind of go off my head, but this was a pretty easy one for me to redo, I think, saying that beforehand. So again, if you have any questions, let me know, but just what you see in the dyeing portion and what you hear me talk about afterwards won't correlate necessarily, but again, that is why I just am re-recording the dyeing videos. So thank you for sticking through this. Let's head into the video. Enjoy, and don't forget to enter the giveaway at the end, and I will see you guys soon. Everyone, Lauren from A Girl and Her Wool here. So today we are doing another dye with me vlog, and if you saw the title or if you saw the teaser from this weekend on my Instagram, then you'll know it is about pooling versus non-pooling. And so I'll get into a little bit of what that means in case you aren't sure. But first, I just want to say thank you again to everybody who has joined my Dye With Me club. It really, you'll see, we dyed up a lot of skeins today, and that's only possible because of the participants of the Dye With Me club, so I really appreciate it. If you don't know what the Dye With Me club is, it's an ongoing subscription that you can cancel anytime, but if you are signed up as of the first of every single month, you will receive a skein that I dyed up in a previous Dye With Me video. And it's at a really good price. It's less than $20, and that includes shipping if you're within the US, and it's low rate shipping, flat low rate shipping everywhere else. And so yes, thank you again. And if you haven't joined if you haven't signed up for it yet, I will put a link directly to it down below this video if you want to go and check it out. And then the other thing too is just a reminder that if you are in the club and plan to be in it as of February 1st, and you like any of the skeins you see here, send me an email after you watch this video and put your name on the list for that skein. It's no guarantee, it's a first come first serve type of thing, but let me know the color and the base throughout any of these Dye With Me videos, and I will take that into account when I package them up next month. Okay, so again, I said I would explain a little bit about what pooling versus non-pooling is. So if you know what it is, then this will hopefully be a recap. And if you don't know what it is, I'm going to show it. I knitted up some swatches of the skeins we're going to be dyeing today. So I dyed up a few skeins where I illustrate kind of pooling, and I dyed up a few skeins with the same colors, same dyes, same bases and everything, but I just changed the technique so that the colors won't pool. And so I knitted up some swatches of each color that we're going to be dyeing up today, to kind of just illustrate what pooling does. So I dyed up my little swatches on little preemie hats. I thought that was a really good idea because I was planning to knit up a swatch, and I was like, what am I going to do with the swatch when it's done? And I said, I had just done my 2021 goals of knitting more for charity, and so I did some preemie hats. And so if you know what pooling is and non-pooling, you can probably pretty easily tell which hat has the pooling skein and which hat doesn't. And if you don't know what it is, what pooling is when the colors kind of form a pattern because of them just kind of sitting on top of each other as they're knit. So the yarn is kind of dyed with color blocking, and you will see this in the video, so I won't go too much into it. But because of that, what ends up happening is, depending on your gauge and what you're knitting, the colors will form this pattern. So you'll see all of the blue is kind of stacked up on top of each other there. And then when I move to this part of the hat, you don't see any blue here, and you see whites and pinks and purples and grays. And then if I move to this side of the hat, we kind of get another blue pattern there. And then here we get some more kind of striping. Whereas if we look at a non-pooling thing, again, this was dyed with the same color, same dyes, you kind of get all of the colors all over the place, and you don't kind of get any of that striping or streaking that's happening. I do want to go into this saying that I am not giving, I don't want to put pooling down. I think when yarn colors pool, sometimes that gets like a negative connotation, and it really depends on what you're knitting on. So when you think about self-striping yarn, so yarn that when you knit it up you get self-striping pair of socks, that's technically organized pooling or like pre-planned pooling. And so the yarn is dyed using a technique similar to what we're going to do today, and it's just planned out so that you'll get a few rows of a color when you knit it up into a sock before it switches to the next color. So pooling isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's really just what you're going for in the design. I think this with the pooling makes a really cute hat pattern, but would I want to knit a sweater out of it? I'm not sure, because I might get a lot of blue like kind of all over in one spot and then not in the other, and maybe that is the look you're going for. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. Today we're just going to look at how to kind of dye it so that the colors pool, and then look at it again so we don't get the colors to pool. And it's really just two different techniques, and we'll talk more at the end a little bit more about some of the other differences we see in here, see in these hats, but that's just kind of to illustrate what I'm going to be getting at by using these dyeing techniques today. So this one is pooling, where we kind of get the colors to stay separate from each other and stack up on top of each other. And then this one is kind of more random. The colors are all over the place. Same dyes, same yarn, totally different looks, which I thought would be really fun for the video today. So I am gonna show the skeins here really quick. I'll show an example of a pulling and a non-pulling one, so you can see here. So this is what the pulling one ends up looking like wound up, and then the non-pulling one is here. Again, same dye, same everything. So let's head to the dye pots, let's dye these up, and then come back because we're going to be talking about it at the end, and of course announce a giveaway winner and a new giveaway. Alright, so here we are at the dye pot, and again, I dyed this up. Again, I referenced it. I'm going to reference it again, that I dyed in batches, and I had multiple bases that I dyed. What you see here is a skein of my sock yarn, and it's just one, and you see that I have it in a larger pan than what you guys are used to seeing, and that's because I'm really trying to mimic what I did the first time around. So if you imagine this skein, not all lonely by itself, but it had other skeins kind of on either side of it. And actually, I think I end up moving this skein to the edge just to kind of help out a little bit. But that's kind of what I did. So I just laid the different skeins that I had vertically across the pan like this to get started. And the first one we're going to do is the pooling skein. All right, so I end up moving the skein over to the side, and part of the reason of why I did that is because I didn't want too much dye bleeding off of it onto either side. So this is the skein that we're going to get pooling on, and I do adjust the camera here so you can see it a little bit better. But because I had the pan full of the skeins, they kind of created a barrier between themselves of not letting the dye kind of bleed all over. And because this is the pooling one, and I mentioned this at the beginning that I wanted color blocking, which basically means that I want the red, so I put red on first, and I really want the red to only stay in this one spot. I don't want it to bleed all throughout the entire skein. And you will see some does bleed out, again, because I don't have the next skein kind of absorbing all of that and them kind of creating a bit of that wall. And so that is just kind of one difference that you're going to see here with the finished one. This one ends up blending in a lot. And I do apologize for the shaking because there's not a lot of yarn weight in there. It's causing it to kind of rattle as it continues to heat up. So and kind of going back, I started with red because red can take a while to set. And so I wanted to get that kind of on there first. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason for why I put it in the center of the skein. It's just where I put it. So that's what we did. I just put red dye across the center of the skein and across like the full width of it. So that way all the strands have approximately, not exactly, but approximately the same amount of red dye. If you were to take each strand of yarn individually, they would all have about the same length of red in there. All right, so I let that set for quite a bit, and you can see that it did shift a little bit, so you see kind of some red all over. Again, that's unique to this one skein kind of being dyed up individually. That didn't happen with the skeins that you're going to see at the end. So next I'm just adding in some blue. I kind of just picked randomly what colors I wanted to do here. And added kind of like a medium tone blue. Again, you can see some of it bleeding into the water. This is just going to be unique for this skein. But again, if you were to look at the skein and each individual strand on there, each strand has approximately, again, this is not a machine, I'm human, and so it has approximately the same amount of blue for each length. And then if you think about it, because it's lying straight, then every single blue strand will lead into the red if you're kind of going from right to left. So next I just add in some pink. Again, I'm kind of going randomly with different colors. I wanted to be able to kind of show the pooling. And so I added in kind of a similar pink that will stand out against the blue. And I actually end up leaving the top white. So I left some white in the skein, so some undyed. And you'll see even in what I show you in the skeins at the end from the original one, some of the pink did bleed into the white, so it's not like necessarily a perfect white. But did leave some white just to kind of not have too much color. I think at this point I was nervous about a lot of the bright colors. And then on the bottom there, I just add in some gray throughout the whole rest of the skein. And this is kind of where the skein turns. And so when we look at it at the end, oh, I'm sorry. First I did like a purple. That's actually a purple. And then there'll be a gray at the end, which you might not see too well in this shot. But if we even focus on the white at the top, you can see that because it kind of goes around where the curve is, we'll have one long length of white. So if you kind of look like red along the top, like, so we go along the red, along the blue, along the pink, then we have a long bit of white, and then we go back around the pink, then the blue, then the red, and then this purple. So because of that, we're gonna have like two spots. If you think about one lap around the skein, we'll have two spots for each color, but then one long length of the white. So that's something to think about if you are thinking about these pooling skeins, is that it does kind of have that section there. And again, I'm going to add gray at the very bottom, so it'll be the same idea with the gray, where there will just be one long length of gray in the color repeat, whereas all of the ones in those middle, the purple, red, blue, and pink, have two. So I hope that makes sense. So I did give those colors some time to set. I'm adding in the gray now, and then I'm going to let it set again because I want to flip the skein over. Because and you can see the gray kind of really bled into the water, but if you think about when I did this with the batches and I had all the skeins there, I didn't really want to like push too much on the skein into the water because I didn't want to get the bleeding in. And so I kind of just let the dye sit on top. So I end up flipping it over just to get underneath, because if I kind of push the dye more into the skein to kind of let it saturate underneath, I would risk the dye kind of spreading throughout the water. And so I really kind of just like lightly pushed on it everywhere just to not give it a speckled look and to give it kind of that uniform look without having the colors bleed everywhere. So I let this sit for a little bit, let the colors really soak into the yarn, and then I flip it over and kind of repeat the same process again. All right, so here we go with kind of flipping over again. It just kind of sit for a few minutes. Some of the colors do kind of bleed into the water. Again, that gray probably didn't have too much time to set, but it did mostly set. The red didn't bleed out, which is pretty good. So again, I'm just flipping it over. It's in the exact same order that it is. So you guys normally see me randomly pile the skeins. Now I purposely did it. I also did the white out of the water, which was a learning experience, I guess, from the first batch that I did. So there you go, learning experience. But I really just use the yarn as a guidance here. So I just try to keep the red in the lines of the red from the other side of the skein and just kind of fill in where the dye didn't get to. So again, just kind of lightly pressing on it so it doesn't spread into the water, but it kind of doesn't stay speckled either. And I do it in the same order. I didn't really let them set in between applying them. I really kind of, for time's sake, kind of kept going here. So just added the red, the blue, the pink, the purple, and the gray in the same order, kind of all at the same time. And talking about this, so I speed up kind of adding the rest of the colors, but talking about this in correlation with what I talked about at the beginning, you can see I'm really kind of doing color blocking. Each color has a specific length of yarn that it's using, and it repeats, and the colors don't really blend together too much. So you get a section of gray, purple, red, blue, pink, and white. And so when you start to knit this, you're gonna knit it in the same pattern that it's coming in, that you see it here. And again, because each strand has approximately the same amount of length of yarn in the same colors, that's how when you knit it up, you get a repeating pattern. And depending again on your gauge and what your pattern is, the colors start to stack on top of each other. Again, you're just knitting the same colors in the same order over and over and over again. So that's what I went for here. Again, it's very different than the Dye With Me's you've seen before, because I normally don't apply colors like this. I tend to go more for the non-pooling colorways versus pooling, just to kind of unify the skein a little bit more when you're knitting it. So at this point, this one's done. It's going to continue setting, and we're going to move on to the next. All right, so we have the second skein here, and of course I started dyeing it before pressing play. But you'll see the technique that I used when I flip it over, but I'm just going to introduce it here while I kind of finish up the top half. So I use this will be the non-pooling version, and I use the exact same colors. So the same red, same blue, purple, pink, and gray. And instead of applying it across in color blocks, I just randomly speckled it on the skein. No pattern whatsoever, just went up and down, left and right, randomly doing every color all throughout the skein. And so you can already see here, again, thinking back on the same thing, if you were to look at one length of yarn around the whole thing, you're gonna get each color kind of a few times throughout, for different lengths in different spots for all of the different strings, I guess you could say. And that is because just because it's on, if you see one of those brighter pink spots, it doesn't necessarily have a bright pink spot across the whole thing, which means that where you had pink kind of going around the skein once, you won't get it the next time. So I hope that makes sense. But you can see it here. It's just more random. You don't have the exact same recurring pattern going round and round the skein every single time. And I will also say that I didn't mind the colors blending together more in this one, because again, when I do non-pooling colorways, I don't mind if the colors blend. I think that helps keep it from having those color block sections. But you can see I just flipped it over again. And I kind of spread it out a little bit just for time's sake. I wanted to make sure I hit on the entire rest of the skein at this one. But just going through it again, and I added more blue. I felt like there wasn't a lot of blue on the other one, and you'll kind of see why when we look at the skeins from the first batch. They came out a little bit more blue, so I wanted to make sure I got the blue on this one. And I didn't leave it speckled, kind of going for the same look of a non-speckled skein. Kind of just smushed it all in there, and then I go back to doing it in the same order. So adding in some red, and with this bright red, you can really see how it's random, right? There's not repeats of the same color across the entire skein. So you're going to get some parts of the skein that are more blue with bits of red, but then maybe the bright pink comes in, and then the gray, and then of course I left some areas of it white to represent that white we did in the pooling skein. So this is probably more comparable to what you're used to seeing in my dye with me's, where they're more random, and that's typically how I dye mine. But again, these are just two different techniques. Again, the same exact yarn. Both of these were 100 gram skeins of my sock base. The exact same colored dyes, didn't use bottles to mix it up, just really did the exact same thing, and it's just a matter of how I applied the dye to the skein. So let's head and see how they came out. And actually, before I do that, I can show you the one video that got recovered. So here's where you can see the non-pooling version of what we just dyed in the full pan. So this is how I dyed both batches. So if you think about the pooling one, it was just full, and I went in straight lines across the whole pan in the same way that I did it in the other one. And you can see here again, you see a lot of the randomness. So you have that gray all throughout, there's a lot of white throughout it, blue randomly, all the colors are just kind of on there randomly. I think at this point I had kind of just moved the pan around, so I think I'm going to start applying, which is why you see kind of less colors going on. So I don't know what color I was up to at this point, but you can see I just applied it randomly. There are no straight lines across the pans. What you see here are the same vertical skeins, so they're not piled randomly. There are 3 skeins lying parallel to each other across the pan in the same way you saw it. And again, all I did was speckle it and then also kind of press it in so we didn't get that speckled look. You can see I have the heat kind of pretty high, and that's really, again, for those reds. Reds can take quite a bit of heat to get going. So that was that. So this is really just in comparison to what I just showed you with the one skein and kind of having it in the batches. Again, I would have loved to show you this entire video, but this is just the one clip that I had of it. And I hope that kind of just like helps visually show the difference in what the non-pooling looked like and what the pooling would have looked like. The other thing I want to add is that last skein closest to you guys that I flipped over, that's the mini. So I actually have the 3 skeins, so you can kind of see the 3 black clips along the right side. Those are the 3 full-size skeins. I did this on 2 skeins of sock and 1 skein of BFL, and then that skein closest to you is the mini that I end up using for knitting into the swatch. So I just threw that in with the pan. Didn't do anything different, just had it kind of lying vertically as well, and again just had the colors randomly applied to it. So yeah, that's that, and we're gonna head back and talk about these things now. Again, this is the non-pooling skein where I just really applied the colors randomly throughout the pan. All right, so lots of skeins dyed up, lots to see here. I'm excited to show you it. So again, I showed kind of these swatches at the beginning of the video. So this is that one that we dyed up that had the colors all separated in strips. And then this one had the colors kind of applied randomly, kind of using more of my more normal techniques that you guys see here in my Dye With Me's. And we're gonna talk about these swatch results in a bit, but I do wanna show you the skeins first. I also wanna mention that I ended up dyeing these on sock and BFL sock only. I didn't dye up on DK. I might have mentioned this in the video before this, but the reason for that was because this will pool. I figure that's more popular within socks. I think people like kind of getting some self-striping type of things, and so I just did it on my sock bases. So if you guys like the ones that pool like this and you want them for socks, which I think would be awesome, and you're in the Dye With Me club, let me know, and then just let me know sock or BFL sock. And then also let me know if you do like seeing that kind of thing on DK too. But anyway, these are the pooling skeins, and I'll show them all individually, but I tried to wind them up a little bit differently so that we could see different colors kind of throughout it. So that's why they look a little bit different. I just, when I was twisting them, I kind of held them in different spots on each one. Whereas when we open it up, you'll see that they're kind of all identical. So that's just something I tried to change up here. So these are the two on the sock base, and you see you get the really distinct colors. And I feel like this is a popular look that you would see with hand-dyed yarn, where you see a lot of the distinct colors. And that's kind of an indication that colors might potentially pool. So when you're looking at hand-dyed yarn, that might be something interesting to see. But you definitely see all the distinct colors. We had that red we did the blue, we did the gray, some pink, and then we of course left some of it white that some of the pink kind of bled into, but that's fine. But we left some white to kind of leave some lightness to it. And so when I untwist it, you will see the colors kind of all as we dyed them, right? So if I hold it up this way, this was the order we dyed it in, with the gray on the bottom there, the pinks, the reds, blues, the brighter pink, and then some of the white. So that is how it looks unskeined. And then of course it skeined up here. So the colors really did stay distinct. We didn't have to move it around too much because we kind of like pushed a lot of the dyes into it. And so when you look at the swatch, you see how the colors really do stay separated. And that is because if we look at, you know, one strand of this, oops, you get, well, I think about looking at one strand, but I want it to focus. So you'll knit across this blue, so that will take a few stitches, and then you'll knit across this pink, across the white, across this other pink, blue, red, and so you're always knitting in that same exact order, and the length that you have of each color is basically the same. Of course, there's a little bit of variation because I didn't like perfectly make a divider in there, but you basically have the same color for the same length over and over again. So when you're knitting something like this, and if you look at like the body before I did the crown decreases, that's why the colors are really lining up perfectly the same every round. Of course, there's a little bit of variation where the colors had a little variation, but you get them to stack because I knit with the same gauge around and around. I had basically the same length of yarn, so I'm going to do the same number of stitches per color, and we get that pooling in there. And that's really how self-striping yarn is made, where they just dye up. They really just make this into a longer skein and then dye a chunk of it up with one color, a chunk of it up with a color, so that way you get the same length again around and around for the same colors. Looking back on it, I did it with, how many colors did I do? So I'll count the white, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors that then were repeated again on the other side. I might do this again with like 3 colors to get those longer bits, and then I think you'll see the pooling even more, right? So because I use so many colors, we have shorter lengths. So right, this is how much blue I had, which really only knit up, what, like 3-4 stitches. Whereas if I had done less colors, so like let's say the blue went from here to here, I would have had 8 or so, and so I would have gotten a third of it to be blue, a third of it to be red, and a third of it to be white, or whatever I was going for. So that's something I could do differently to kind of show pulling again. But again, you see, because it stays like this in the color blocking, the length of each colored segment is the same and it goes in the same pattern. That's why we end up with pulling. So I hope that makes sense. And then again, when you twist it up into the skein, you'll see the colors distinct because, again, they're not blended up. I could reskein this. Maybe I'll do that with, well, I won't do that with one of them because I want the people who receive it to see it too. But if I reskein this, meaning that if I just put this back on my Swift and kind of change the circumference a little bit of this, the colors would jumble up. So you wouldn't see all of this color blocking in the skein. It would still color, you know, it would still pool when you knit it up. But sometimes I think people reskein it for that reason, to just kind of jumble it up so you don't see kind of all the distinct colors as well. So that is that. Again, I dyed that up on 2 skeins of sock and 1 skein of BFL sock. Again, I kind of talked, oh no, this one is airing first. You can see the colors don't really come out too differently between BFL sock and the merino sock. They come out pretty much the same. I haven't really noticed too much of a difference in dyeing on those bases. All right, so now for the non-pooling ones, and I'll hold them up together at the end. Okay, so for the non-pooling ones, and I want to remind you too that these are all kind of one of a kind. We didn't go for consistency, so you'll see kind of differences between them. Some have more red, some have more blue, some have more whatever, but we use the same dyes, but we just kind of applied them randomly. And so you don't get that same color blocking. So let me just hold up one skein. So if we look at this skein, right, we used blues and pinks, so you actually get more of like a purple feel. So even in here, you'll see a lot of purples, but we didn't really use like a purple dye, and that's just because the blues and the reds and the pinks blended. I think doing it in the skein really toned down the red that's in here. So the red is here, but again, it's kind of pretty toned down. A lot of that too will have to do with the fact that we left white in there too. So instead of having the white kind of just on its own, it really kind of left the skein a little bit lighter as well. And looking at the swatch, you see that you don't really get the same color blocking or striping. So you get blue all throughout, there are pinks all throughout, the grays are all throughout, and they're all just like a few stitches at a time. You don't get these long lengths of the colors because we didn't really do huge chunks of one color at a time. It was just a little bit at a time. So you kind of look at these two hats. Well, before we get into that, I'll untwist the skein so we can see the difference. And I'm also gonna hold them up next to each other, but we kind of get colors randomly. So you see some of the reds in there, some of the blue. Here we get more blue, white, left undyed, the pinks and the purples, but you can't really distinctly call out like you do on this skein. Right, so all the same dyes, just one is kind of specific in where the dye landed, and this one is a little bit more random. So here's like a really colorful part where you can see the different colors, but they're not laid out like this. So interesting stuff. Okay, so looking at these two swatches, I think one thing I kind of noticed, one is the the pooling and the non-pooling, of course. But this one came across to me as a lot more pink, a lot more red, and this one kind of gave off more of a muted feel and more blue. And I think that a lot of that could do with, one, they were dyed in different pans. I could have used more blue in this one than I used in kind of that section. So yes, it could be more of a blue colorway. I wasn't doing formulas, it was one of a kind, so that could be part of it. But I think that the blue also muted down a lot of the reds, and so did kind of adding the pinks to it. So you see red bits in there for sure, right? Like when I hold it close up, you definitely see red pieces, but when you hold it back, I think it's not necessarily what your eye is drawn to. Here, your eyes distinctly see the blue and distinctly see the red, whereas in this one, they kind of more blend and you get that muted like purple feel, blue and purple feel to the hat. So again, it's really just the looks that you're going for. I think too with this one, right, like I said, a lot of the colors muted each other down. I didn't necessarily dye one color at a time, let it set, dye another color, let it set. I did kind of let them blend together. And so you could probably do this again, the same exercise with this one, and not get as much purple if you kind of did it patiently and let each color really set before putting new ones in. Because then they won't kind of blend into the water as much before setting on the skein. You'll really get the distinct. So you can still get the random look with the distinct colors by doing it that way. So again, I thought that was really fun to show. I hope you found that interesting to see a little pooling versus non-pooling. I'm happy to do this again with less colors or kind of another look. So if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments below, as well as if there's something else you kind of want to see with this, maybe with more similar colors, something like that, or very bright distinct colors. We could always do something with that. But yeah, and in the end, I have 2 preemie hats to go and donate, so I'm happy about that, and they're both adorable little hats. So that is it with today's Dye With Me. Again, in 2 weeks from now, we'll be starting our, I probably didn't mention this at the beginning, but 2 weeks from now, we're going to be starting our new series. So in the last Dye With Me, I had you guys look at photos and pick what you wanted to use, which photo you wanted to use for an upcoming series. We are going to be starting that series in 2 weeks. So I did not mention this at the beginning, but this was not based on those photos. We will be doing that next time, and I've actually already dyed up the first set of skeins for the Dye With Me in 2 weeks, and I think it came out pretty great.
Get down.
Pi, you have to be good because him shouting is interrupting my video. I'm going to be using, again, one of those photos as kind of the inspiration for the series, and what we do with it, you guys will have to stay tuned to find out. Again, if you are, and I'm winding this back up so I can show all the skeins, but if you are in the Dye With Me club and you love any of the skeins you saw today, please send me an email. Again, it's on a first come first serve, no guarantees type of thing. So if you really loved something and you want to get your name on the list, reach out to me at agirlandherwool.com. And then we will get back to it in 2 weeks. So these are the 3 non-pooling skeins. So we have BFL sock and 2 on sock, and then the pooling ones, so 2 on sock, 1 on BFL sock as well. And that is it. So stick around, we're gonna do a little giveaway and then wrap this up. Okay, so we have the winner for last time's giveaway. So on the New Year's themed video we posted at the end of 2020, I hosted a giveaway for a $20 gift card into my shop, agirlandherwool.com. And I asked people to, just comment on the video, but of course to vote for what we're gonna be using in our upcoming series. And the winner is LA Debs or La Debs. So please get in contact with me. You can email me at agirlandherwool@gmail.com, and I will send you your coupon code for your $20 off in the shop. for this week's giveaway, I'm going to be giving away a skein of one of my new colorways in my shop. So if you haven't checked out my January 2021 shop update video that I posted most recently, I will have a link to it below. But these are the new colorways. So we have Aurora, which is a brighter blues, greens, pinks, purples, and speckly skein that people are seeming to be loving. And we have Galentine's Day, which is my Valentine's colorway. People seem to be enjoying this one as well, which is just like pinks, purpley, and speckles of some darker gray. So go check out that shop update video. You can also get these in the shop. They also go really well together. So the winner will win one of these, a skein, color of your choice, base of your choice, one of these skeins. These skeins are already called for, but you can win the color of your choice, the base of your choice of one of these two colorways. So enter by answering the prompts below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about pooling and non-pooling. Do you go towards pooling skeins, or do you stay far away from them? I'd love to know. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, check out the Dye With Me Club. And on Friday, I am going to be talking about, I have to wait for my memory to remember. Oh, Friday, I'm going to be sharing with you guys January Club. So Friday is the 15th. And so on the 15th of every month, I release the prior month's club. I do a reveal of what the colorway looks like. And then for one day only, you can purchase it. And so I'm probably gonna release that either Thursday night or very early Friday morning, so you can watch the video. And then if you wanna purchase it, it'll be a one day only type of thing. And then that kind of kicks off the February club season. So if you haven't already signed up for a February mystery yarn of the month or February mystery mini skein set of the month club, definitely go check them out. And I will see you guys then. So have a great week. And yeah, see you then. Bye.